Analytics, breaking down the tournament. John Clay, a well-known writer who covers Kentucky, joins us on Sicem 365 Radio and 365 Sports. And John, thank you very much. Kentucky is obviously loaded. They had to go through that time where they had some injuries and took a couple of lumps. Baylor's done that as well. A couple of other teams have as well. Your thoughts about who they are as they hit the tournament now, post-SEC?
They've, as you mentioned, they've had some injuries. Ty Washington, freshman guard, has been hurt off and on with an ankle problem. It seems to be okay. He didn't seem to bother him in the SEC tournament, although they did lose to Tennessee in the semifinals. Severe Wheeler had a couple of instances where he ran into screens and got injured and missed some time. The only other injury they have right now, Jacob Toppin broke his nose in the first game at the SEC tournament against Vanderbilt. But overall, they're pretty healthy. They played, when they played well, they played really well. They blitzed Tennessee early in the year. They beat Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse, beat them decisively. But they've also struggled, especially in some late game situations coming down the stretch. So, Tennessee, they ended up losing 2 out of 3 to Tennessee. They did not shoot the ball well at all in the SEC tournament against the Vols. They were 2 of 20 from three-point range, but still had a chance to win the game at the end. So I think they feel like that they are a good team. They have a chance to make a deep run, but they have to play at their best. They're not a team that can beat you if they're not beat a really good team if they're not playing at their best.
What did you think of the draw that they got, especially the first weekend, potential to play a pretty darn good Murray State team that's 30-2?
And San Francisco's not bad either. Yeah. The Murray State plays too. So, there's some potential matchup problems. Yeah, Murray State's 30-2. They went 20-0 basically in the OVC. It'll be a huge game for Murray State if they play Kentucky up in Indianapolis, Murray State being an in-state team. Then if they get by Murray State or San Francisco, no matter who wins that game, there could be a matchup against Purdue in Sweet 16. And Purdue is kind of the type of team that is giving Kentucky trouble this year. Oscar Tshiebwe's had an outstanding year. He has an excellent chance of being college basketball's player of the year, but he has struggled some against bigs, against teams that have length, especially if they have multiple bigs. And Purdue has a couple of those guys in Edey and Williams, who's a load at 6'10", 255. So that'd be interesting. And Jaden Ivey's so athletic for Purdue; he's going to be a matchup problem for anybody. So, and then on down through the bracket, I think there are potential matchup problems for Kentucky. That's not to say they're going to get beat. They're good enough to beat any of those teams, but they're going, like I said earlier, they're going to have to be playing well to advance.
You mentioned Oscar Tshiebwe, and you mentioned a little bit about him, but what's it just been like to see his time so far there at Kentucky, and then how much of a difference and impact do you feel like he's made?
He's made a tremendous impact. I mean, he's been so consistent all year long. It was funny, he told us before the season started his goal was to average 20 rebounds a game. We kind of laughed it off that he was joking, and here he is, he's leading the nation in rebounding at 15 a game. He's got something like 26 double-doubles. Now, he got in foul trouble against Tennessee. He set out the last 11 minutes and 30 seconds in the first half, which obviously had an effect in that game. But he's done a good job at this point of staying out of foul trouble. But I think when Kentucky got him midway through last year, he didn't set out the rest of the season last year when he transferred from West Virginia. I think they felt like they had a good player, but I don't think anybody had any idea that he would have the type of season that he's had this year.
Your thoughts about the region? You mentioned some of the teams, obviously. Then you look at the bluest of the blue bloods with UCLA, Kentucky, North Carolina, the defending national champions, and Baylor, and some of the other teams you mentioned. Your thoughts about it, just kind of as all of them in one location?
Yeah, I think it's a tough region. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Kentucky played North Carolina early in the year and blitzed them in the CBS Sports Classic, but I think Carolina's a different team now. UCLA has, made that run last year to the Final Four. One of their best players is Johnny Juzang, a kid who played his freshman year at Kentucky before transferring back home to California. To me, another interesting team to watch, we already talked about Purdue and Murray State and San Francisco, is Virginia Tech. I think Mike Young has done a tremendous job there, to win the ACC tournament. Kentucky faced him before when he was at Wofford in the tournament a few years ago, and they gave Kentucky everything they could ask for in that game. So, yeah, you look at St. Mary's. There's a number 5 seed. I mean, UCLA and St. Mary's win. That's going to be a heck of a second-round game between those two teams. So I think it's a tough region. I'm seeing other people say, "Oh, Kentucky got a good draw." I'm not so sure. I think it's a tough region, and obviously with Baylor as the number 1 seed, and you guys know a lot more about Baylor than I do. But I haven't been impressed with them the way that they play all year. They've had some injury problems, I know themselves, and have been able to work their way through it.
So, I mean, Kentucky being the program they are in basketball, crazy there. It's hard to win national title. It's been since 2008 for Kansas. It's been since 2012 for Kentucky. It's 2017 for North Carolina. But for Kentucky in particular, that their fans have had to wait now a decade between national titles, and this is the team that appears to maybe have the most potential to break through that ceiling. What's the pitch like in Lexington about this team?
Yeah, I think the consensus is that this is Cal's best team and best chance since he got to the Final Four in 2015 with that team that ended up going 38-1, had a chance to go 40-0. But obviously, what he's done with the transfer portal and bringing in, as we mentioned, Tshiebwe, but also Kellen Grady and Severe Wheeler has helped. And Ty Washington is a really good freshman guard. You got Keon Brooks, who's a good forward. A junior who's got some experience. This is a more experienced team than Cal's used to having because of those guys in the transfer portal. And I feel like I think Kentucky fans were very optimistic. That optimistic is dampened a little bit by the fact that they lost to Tennessee. The Vols took 2 out of 3 from them. But I still think they're optimistic, and they feel like if they could get some breaks, this team can get to the Final Four. And they're happy to be in the hunt for the Final Four. But you're right. I mean, this is Kentucky basketball. Fans think they ought to be in the Final Four every year, and it's been since 2015 since they were in the Final Four. 2012, as you mentioned, since they won the title. So, Kentucky fans, they think they ought to be there every year.
Yeah, it's like Yankees fans. And certain teams like that we mentioned, they're also a part of that region. So the SEC obviously was very deep. Your thoughts? The SEC and the Big 12 had their series earlier in the year, like they do at the end of every January, and the SEC got them. But both leagues are very, very good. What were your thoughts, John, that each of them got 6 teams in and the Big 10 got 9?
I was surprised by that. I think that's a little out of kilter. I was surprised teams like Illinois, Michigan, Rutgers ended up. I mean, not Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Rutgers got in from the Big 10. I thought maybe 1 or 2 would get in. I certainly didn't think all 3 would get in. I mean, you look at a team like Texas A&M that, to me, was playing about as well as anybody coming down the stretch. They get all the way to the SEC title game where they lost to Tennessee, but they beat Auburn and Arkansas on the way to get there. I guess the fact that A&M lost 8 in a row during the middle part of the season, the committee couldn't get past that. But I think another thing when you look at about how competitive the 2 leagues are, when you look at the Big 12 and the SEC, is what's happening in the SEC right now. As far as the coaching carousel goes. Tom Crean gets fired one day. The next day, Missouri fires Conzo Martin. The next day, LSU fires Will Wade after they get their notice of allegations. Then you had the news, which kind of flabbergasted those of us who follow the conference, when Mike White leaves Florida for Georgia. And today, Frank Martin gets the axe in South Carolina. I think that speaks to how competitive the conference has become, because a lot of those guys are really good coaches, but they ended up getting fired at their schools. So, the SEC has really improved, but I think, as you mentioned, the Big 12's had a great year too with Kansas, Baylor. I really like Texas Tech, the draw that they got in the way they're playing. I think they can make a lot of noise. So I think both these leagues will make a lot of noise in the tournament.
John, what do you make of Mike White going to a rival in a school that's also not nearly as much of a basketball school as Florida is, who won 2 national titles under Billy Donovan?
Well, yeah. I think Mike is a good coach. In his second year, he took Florida to the Elite Eight. But, it's hard to follow somebody like Billy Donovan, and they kind of tailed off since then. I think he decided that, come back to Florida and really be on the hot seat next year, or I could go to Georgia when the Georgia job opened up, and Georgia apparently courted him, that he could go to Georgia and start that clock all over again. And after the season that Georgia had this year, where they only won 6 games, they only won 1 SEC game, that it might be a little more welcoming there. But, yeah, it was a move that surprised everybody. You just don't see, especially inside a conference, a coach go from one rival team to another like that. So now the interesting question is, if you're Florida, who do you go out and try to hire now?
Tennessee, there was arguments about they ended up not being a number 2 seed. Duke got a 2 seed. Your thought? Tennessee got Kentucky earlier by 13. They won, I guess, in Knoxville, then also knocked them out of the tournament. Your thoughts about Tennessee with 2 wins against Kentucky, heck of a year that they had, beat a red-hot A&M to win the championship, and being a 3, not a 2 like Duke is.
Yeah, I think Tennessee should have been a 2. And I think you could make a case that they deserved a 2 over Kentucky because, as you mentioned, about head-to-head, winning 2 out of 3. And I definitely think they had a better resume than Duke. Tennessee went 15. After they got blitzed by Kentucky at Rupp, where Kentucky shot 67%. After that, Tennessee went 15 and 2. They won 12 of their last 13. I really like their chances in the tournament because, you know, you hear every year you have to have good guards. Tennessee's got 3 really good ball handlers in Kennedy Chandler, Santiago Vescovi, and Zakai Ziegler. Chandler was the MVP in the SEC tournament, the freshman guard. They've also got some bigs, like I talked about with Purdue and some other teams that are effective. I really like Tennessee's chance. I know Rick Barnes gets knocked for underperforming in the tournament every year, but I think this is the best chance he's had in a while. So I like Tennessee. I think they should have been a 2 seed, yes.
From the Lexington Herald-Leader in Kentucky, covers Kentucky, John Clay. John, thank you very much for being a part of the show. And depending on what happens this weekend, if there's a chance they continue on a collision course, maybe we get you again next week. We appreciate it.
We could be seeing the Bears and the Cats in the Elite Eight. We'll
Absolutely.
see how it plays out.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
we'll be eating cheesesteaks together. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you. That's a good dude right there. John Clay, a Lexington Herald-Leader, Kentucky. Yeah, that's a great point that he made. It's been, 15 since they went to the Final Four? That's a drought. You know, that's a drought. Kansas has been really, really good knocking on the door, but they've had their slip-ups as well. It's been since, 03 or so for them? Not the Final Four, but to win a championship. It's not easy. That's why when you get one, you absolutely need to cherish it along the way. I got something that I just, for some reason, I'm looking at Kentucky's record. And, of course, they lost to Tennessee on, Saturday. The following conferences are the only conferences among anyone that can make the NCAA tournament with 2 teams, not 3 or 4 or 5, because you've just had these tournaments so people get knocked out. Everyone's got a loss. Go look at the standings on ESPN or whatever site you go to. Everybody's got a loss, at least a 1-game losing streak. The Summit League, the Southwestern, which has Alcorn State, Texas Southern, etc., the Northeastern Conference, Mid-American, the American East, and the Ivy League have 2 teams that have won a game to end the year. Like the Ivy League, not everybody gets in that tournament. Mm-hmm. But so does the Big 12. Because Oklahoma State beat Texas Tech to close out the year, and then, of course, did not play in the tournament. Then Kansas ran the table and won the Big 12 tournament. I was looking at it, I was like, God, look at all these losing streaks. And, of course, there are. Everyone gets knocked out of the conference tournament. Now, some don't get to the tournament. That's just a weird, on a day when we played Jimmy Fallon random, a random note about winning streaks and not around the country.
Like you said, though, it only makes sense because there's only one tournament winner, so everybody's lost the game here recently except for tournament winners. But, yeah, that would look a little odd for sure. It's
interesting. Go to the standings page of whatever site you go to in college basketball, and you just see nothing but L's, like just hundreds of them, it seems like. And that does, as we mentioned, make sense because of conference tournament play. 4:45 is the time. We'll have Paul's top 5. What's it on?